Okay, so thank you again to both Manos for the invitation. It's a real pleasure for me to be here in Athens, as I'm at half Greek, and I'm a little bit stressed today because I not only speak in front of colleagues, but also in front of my parents, so it's a little bit stressing for me. I will try to be good at speaking. So I will speak about my technique of arthroscopic Latarjet with a simple double button. It's the NIST technique from Pascal Boileau. I do it with a 70-degree scope, and as you can see, I start with putting my scope from posterior and making the portal we call the northwest portal, which is just in front of the bicep and in front of the acromion. After that, I look at every things in the shoulder. We see we don't have any problem on the posterior labrum. We have a small L-sax lesion here, and we have a small slap lesion also that I just debray in this case because we are very near to the biceps and we don't have any problem, real problem on the biceps. After that, I make the real first step, which is the BANKART prepare and the GLENOID prepare. I used to start with the CORACOID process, but now I start from here before opening the wide the rotator interval to have less water after in the outside part of the shoulder. After preparing the labrum, I make with a rasp the anterior surface of a glenoid. You may have some bleeding in this part of the shoulders, so you have to use also the waiver. After I move to the CORACOID process, I start following the subscap. I clean everything. In this case, because the bursa was very big, I use a little bit the shaver, but normally I only use the vapor because I'm afraid of bleeding. You see here the basis of a CORACOID process. I clean all the lateral part of the CORACOID process, and after I try to find the conjoint tendon. After that, I just follow him from the back to the not from the back, from the down part of the tendon to the superior part of the tendon, and I find the upper part of the CORACOID process. I clean everything until I see medially the pec minor, as you can see here on this video. When everything is clean in this part, I make the north portal that we will see in a few seconds. I put a needle at the top of the CORACOID process, one lateral and one medial, and the medial one have to be just in front of the basis of the CORACOID process. Then I make the north portal from this part, and I detach from proximal to distal the pec minor. This part is very demanding because it's bleeding. After that, I prepare the undersurface of the CORACOID process with a burr again to have a flat surface. I always start from proximal just to make a little slot that help me for the rasp after that. I clean everything, and after that, we will start the positioning of the guide. A small tip in this case, when you use this three-part guide, the medial part of the guide, you have to see it and to see it flat. It shows that you have in a good position on the CORACOID process. Then you make a slot, you pass the suture. I made a relay from inside to outside, and then the button came again from the north portal. Okay, just after that, we have to have a suture management from the anterior part move to the south portal. The lateral, the wide sutures comes north. That will help me after that to connect with the glenoid. And when everything is prepared, I use the saw. It's a Smith & Nephew saw. Everything is made in the ancillary by a Smith & Nephew. And I cut it. I also chose this case because it was interesting, because you see you have some expansion of the pec minor that was not visible before to cut the CORACOID process, and I just finish it because in these cases it was not possible because of the nerves and the axillary vessels that are close. When the cut is made, it's not a problem. When I go back again in the joint, you see I never change just until that time my view. I always have the scope in the posterior portal. I now put two anchors, one at 5 o'clock, one at 3. It will be a mark for me just for the positioning of the guide to prepare the glenoid drilling, and after that the coracoid positioning. I made a TOTS, the classic one described by Pascal Boileau, and I try to take as much as possible capsule and labrum and in the anterior and inferior part of the shoulder, and I put it on the 3 o'clock position anchor. I don't tie the knot. Okay, I just prepare it, and I will tie it in the end of the operation. After that, for the first time, I will change the view. I put 3 stitches, one in the west portal, one in the northwest, and after that, I put the scope in the northwest portal, and I put from the posterior portal the guide. Now we see we have a good flat anterior surface of a glenoid. We make the drilling, and after that, we remove the guide and put the posterior spreader. You have to use the TOTS in this case, in this time, to put the spreader just below the labrum. Then we go outside the joint, in the front of the joint. In this case, I use also the shaver. Normally, I don't use the shaver because I'm afraid of bleeding in the anterior part of the shoulder. But this case has very big, need very big debridement. That's why I choose it only in this case to do that. So you have to see the 3 sisters. You follow them. You see the 2 brothers medially. And when you see the 2 nerves, you can protect them. If you see and protect the nerves, you don't have any risk to injure the nerves. So when everybody is far from the surgical point, you can push the spreader and pass the subscap. Then you open it, and you start the split by this technique. I use the vapor to open the tendon. Be careful. If you go too deep, you will open the tendon, and you will damage the labrum and the capsule. So you have to be, this part is very difficult, and you have to be very careful with that. When you make the split, you have to be always parallel to the superior part, the round tendon of the subscap, and also, that I'm showing you now, and also parallel to the 3 sisters, as you can see well in this video. So for this part, you have to be, very careful, okay, because if you do it right, it will make the operation easier. If you do it not the same, the good way, it will be more difficult because you will have some soft tissues that will be blocking the view. Then you put the anterior spreader, and you manage the suture. You pass from the north and connect with the posterior glenoid drilling. Sometimes, like in this video, you have some management of the suture to do because you are not in the good part of the spreader, so you have to put it medially from the lateral spreader. And sometimes, even if you have done that, the coracoid process doesn't want to go in the right plan. So you have to take a grasper, do the same, and simply to help your coracoid process to go in the front part of the glenoid. Okay, when you pass the subscap, everything is okay. You just have to check a little bit your positioning, and you can go to release the tendon if needed. In this case, I need to make a little release laterally and medially. And it helps me after to position the coracoid process in the good position. I start to tight, looking from outside, and then I go back inside the joint with a posterior view. I check that the coracoid process is okay, and I finish to tension my suture at that time. I don't know if you know that, but Pascal Boileau used to tie the BANKART and then to make the knots. I prefer to do the knots before, just to be sure that my bone block is in the good position and that it's not moving anymore. After that, I finish with a BANKART repair. And I think that the BANKART repair is something you have to do even, because it has a role for the proprioception, and also when you use only 2 buttons, maybe have a role to, for the bone block not to rotate. Here we can see the final testing from outside, and then we will go in the rotator interval. Just to see and to check that the head, the human head, is well centered, and that we have reconstructed the anterior part of the glenoid from inside. Thank you very much.